If you're talking about it, we're talking about it. Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Yes, you better believe it. It's Tuesday, the 14th of May, 2024. This is Locked and Loaded. I'm Rick Munn. Always nice to have some new blood coursing through the veins and arteries of Locked and Loaded. Very happy to be talking for the first time this morning to Andrew Eborn. Andrew is the president of Octopus TV, and I could make a pun about he's got his tentacles everywhere, but I'm not going to do that. He's also a lawyer. He's a broadcaster, a futurist, and a speaker. Andrew, good morning and welcome to Locked and Loaded. How the hell are you?
I am incredibly well, Rick. It's a delight to join you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, all around the globe, because I know people are watching you in every corner of this glorious planet.
They are, my friend. Every nook and cranny, even under some rocks, we've got some cockroaches watching us at the minute. But we welcome everybody. We don't turn anybody away here at TNT. And speaking of cockroaches, let's start by talking about Rishi Sunak. Rishi is on a tour at the minute. I think he's trying to rebrand himself. He's semi-prophet of doom, semi-savior of the world. I think he fancies himself as a cross between Mad Max and Martin Luther King, but he's neither of those. What do you think about what he's been spewing over the last few days?
I think that one of the great things he said is about embracing technology. And he warned about it yesterday in his speech. He said, look, this is one of our greatest achievements, but also potentially our biggest existential threat. And I talk around the world, Rick, as a futurist, back to the futurist, because I know you love your puns. And we look at that. We basically look at the seismic advances in technology, in artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. And what they've done, they've looked at, there's this drug at the moment about how you can all lose weight. That's what they're saying in the UK newspapers. Wegovy, it's called, or Ozempic, which sounds like the entrance to a Eurovision Song Contest, doesn't it? But that's the idea. And they're saying that the new research is basically about 40% of cancers are caused or directly related to obesity. But this wonder drug can basically help not just deal with cancer, but also about things like blood pressure and so on and so forth. So this is being touted around. And what Rishi has done in his speech, he says, well, hang about, this has helped tremendously with the particular company that basically came up with this drug. And we should be looking at very, very similar things here in the UK about embracing technology. And you might remember last year at Bletchley Park, we had the very first ever AI safety summit. And people from around the world, including Elon Musk, came and joined us right here to discuss that. So he's right to shine a spotlight on the UK as far as AI is concerned. And his own personal brand, well, he needs some wins. It was only a few months ago he talked about the 5 promises that he's going to do, not least, obviously, stopping the boats, which has been the bane of virtually every newspaper and his reporting ever since he got into power. But he's starting to make some sort of headway on that. We've had the Rwanda Act, the Safety Act, as it's called. And it was Abraham Lincoln, you will recall very well. I know it's very often that you quote him on your wonderful show. But Abraham Lincoln, he used to say, basically, if you count the tail of a dog as a leg, how many legs does a dog have? Well, the answer is still 4, because just because you call it a tail doesn't make it a leg. Well, the Rwanda safety bill did exactly that. It said Rwanda's a safe country, even though it may not be. And so the issues there need to be addressed and so on and so forth. But in terms of Rishi's own side, he's right, as I say, to embrace technology and to basically trumpet the UK on that sort of platform. So he's right, at least on that side.
Here's the thing, right? Here's where we might disagree here in love, okay? Without coming to fisticuffs here. I get that technology is zooming ahead. I get that it's streamlining everything. I get that it's making things easier and simpler and faster and more convenient for us. I get all that. But I can't help but hanker back to the good old days. In my mind, nostalgia is a powerful thing. And I'm thinking, okay, before mobile phones, or before the internet, or before GPS. I don't know if you can remember the Ordnance Survey. They used to publish big maps. And when you wanted to get around, you had to buy an Ordnance Survey map. And I can remember, Andrew, getting out of my car in an unknown place, spreading my map over the bonnet of my car and attempting to navigate around with that. Was it difficult? Yes. Was it a pain in the ass? Yes. But have the gains we have made, okay, and this isn't the thrust of this conversation, but I get where you're coming from, all right? I get all that. But I don't know, when I look around at the way the world is going at the minute, connectivity isn't necessarily a win. Are we actually connecting with people? Or are we just making connections? Okay, there's a big difference. If you and I sat and had a cup of coffee, I guarantee you the connection would be powerful. But to connect like this for 10 minutes over Zoom, is it really a connection? Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, no, I totally get what you're saying. And I always say that the more devices that we have and the more wonderful, smart devices that we have, the less smart we are as human beings. I think our ability to communicate with fellow human beings, you only have to go to restaurants now, Rick, and see what people are doing. And every 5 seconds, they're checking their phone. They've got to make sure they get that social media hit and so on and so forth. And it's the same with advances in AI. People are worried now that they can do the first draft of essays on Chat GPT and other platforms. The short answer is they can. What tends to happen, though, is you then either you use it or you lose it. So people don't know how to think and they don't know about calculating. When I was growing up, probably when you were growing up as well, we used to sit in the classroom and do our times table. Do you remember that? And people had to sort of learn it off by rote. Nowadays, you've got a calculator that can do all of that for you. The difficulty is that education needs to advance at the same sort of pace. So we need to do different ways of testing people. So on the education front, what I'm always an advocate about, and various political parties have taken my idea, is talk about oracy. You should teach children basically how to be able to speak, to stand up in front of a crowd and to explain things. So Chat GPT might do your very first draft, but you need to be able to explain it and to deal with questions and come on glorious shows like yours and talk about things. I think those sort of communication skills are things that we should be emphasizing. But I always say that artificial intelligence is basically there as a co-pilot. And that's the way to understand the technology and basically make sure that you embrace that, but without falling victim of it, because otherwise that's the way that redundancy follows.
I've yet to see, right? And I'm being a little bit provocative here with you, but I've yet to see a Hollywood movie yet where AI in the future has ever ended well for humans when artificial intelligence got the run of things. And I'm saying that to make light of what's going on, because listen, people are very set in their ways, my way, your way, somebody could sit in between. And there's so much falling out happening about people that disagree. And I don't give a damn anymore. I've realized that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So all you can do is put your point across. I have my views, you have your views, and people can draw their own conclusions from it. And just before we take a little headline break here, I can't give the source of this quote, but it was to do with telephones. You mentioned telephones, and it's not Abraham Lincoln. He didn't say this, but somebody said, when our phones were attached to the wall with a cord, then we were free. When the cord was severed and then we became, mobile, then we became enslaved by those same devices. And they are, to an extent, digital prisons. You painted the picture of the restaurants, the mothers, the fathers,
BlackBerry, it used to be called Crackberry, you might remember when it first came out, those wonderful little phones. People are addicted, and there's wonderful devices and mechanisms that the phone companies do to keep us addicted, not least those little 3 dots that keep swirling, or little words come up like typing. I mean, somebody's going to send you a message, so you're always hooked. Very, very clever.
Very clever indeed. Very clever indeed. We're going to take a little headline break right now, Andrew, just for 30 seconds. When we come back at the other side, let's look at the state of play in general for Britain, because obviously Rishi's painting a very rosy picture, talking about GDP is up and the NHS waiting lists are at the lowest levels they've been for quite some time, given that they were astronomically high to begin with. That's not really a boast per se. Let's look at the spin that's going on in and around the Tories at the minute as Rishi tries to save his little ass at the next general election. We'll do that when we come back here on TNT.
We're ready. We're ready.
The news
is our business, and we never close. Never close.
TNT Radio News. Today's news talk. This is TNT Radio.
Yes, it is indeed, and I'm happy to be talking this morning live, uncensored, unscripted, and all that jazz with the one and only Andrew Eborn. Andrew, I'm looking at some propaganda that's been spewed forth by some government ministers, one of which, Victoria Atkins, is telling us that 6 months of progress has been made on the NHS waiting list, and a key cancer target has been hit. NHS in England is delivering. Let's stick with the plan. And the figures that she was referring to was overall NHS waiting lists have decreased by around 200,000 since last September. This is the biggest 6-month fall in over 10 years outside the pandemic. thanks to the hard work of NHS England, who are providing patients with care that is faster, simpler, and fair. Interesting analogy to make. If you run yourself into 2 million quid's worth of debt today, and then you say, well, I paid 50 grand off my credit card bill next month. That sounds like a lot, but you've got to put everything into perspective. 200,000 people off the waiting list in September, given that they're in the 6, 7, pushing up towards 8 million. It's hardly something to boast about, is it?
Well, it's always interesting. You're absolutely right. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. And there's always the one way that you can guarantee you can make someone a millionaire is to make sure they start off as a multi-millionaire. So you're right. It's all about comparative. And we've had all sorts of things, all sorts of strikes here in the UK about doctors not receiving fair wages. And it is. There are certain things that we need to make sure that that's looked at. But in addition to that, it's about efficiencies. And I go back to my pet subject, if you like, about artificial intelligence. And there was a research done in the University of California, San Diego, that said that chatting to ChatGPT was more empathetic and more accurate than chatting to your GP, because it's got more time, it's got more research, and so on and so forth, and it can listen to the people. So we need to embrace technology. It's not just about money. It's turning around and saying, look, how can we make the whole process more efficient? Make sure that people do get seen and do get to talk to somebody when they need to talk to somebody, and make sure that we can basically speed up that whole sort of process.
It is. I'm laughing here when I'm thinking about Chat GPT being more empathetic than GPs and how this could be the future for medicine. I say this. Forget about Chat GPT. Before Chat GPT came along, were we not already effectively becoming our own physicians? Because let's say you get sick today. I've got a terrible pain in my right side and I'm feeling a little bit dizzy. What do? You go into Google, dizzy, pain in right side, and it'll probably bring up what's wrong with you pretty accurately. Then you go, if you can manage to get a GP, and the last few times I've been to one, thank God it hasn't been for quite some time, they sit you down and they say, what's the problem? And you'll say, well, I'm dizzy and I've got a pain on my right side. And then they'll inevitably say, what do you think it is? And then you'll tell them and they'll probably agree with you, because if they don't know, they'll go in and they'll have a look at it as well. So it's a really odd setup. But yeah, isn't it a sad state of affairs, Andrew? That people, and I would agree with that. It's a sad state of affairs.
I think what's happened, Rick, is that everybody now has become an expert. And what happened when we had lockdown, everybody become a virologist, if you like. When there were constitutional issues, everybody was an expert on the Constitution. And all we're looking for is evidence to pander to our own prejudices. So we go in that eternal cycle, if you like. We surround ourselves with media that just gives an opinion that aligns with our own. We have friends on social media who just repeat and keep regurgitating the same inaccurate statements. And all of that is doing is confirming our prejudices. What I always try and emphasize is that we should be questioning everything. We should keep an open mind, because the short answer is there are lots of things that are being discovered all of the time. We have various things like the vaccines at the moment, where all of a sudden people are talking about there being blood clots. Well, people have been talking about that for a little while. So we need to drill down into that and make sure that that's listened to. But the reality is this: I'm not a doctor, you're not a doctor. We can turn around and have our opinion and describe the symptoms. But if you presuppose all sorts of things, you're going to go down that particular route to lead to that conclusion. So I always urge everybody, it's like getting news sources. Try and get your news sources from as many different places as possible.
Yeah.
And what I love about TNT is we always shine more light and less heat on a subject. Well, a bit of heat is always good occasionally. But we try and listen to all those different voices and say, look, actually, we may not have all the answers, but people out there will have an opinion, but they'll be informed opinions. And as long as we can get the evidence to back up certain opinions, then we can analyze those and try and reach a sort of educated decision as to what is the right thing to do in any particular situation.
Is right. And, that's something that we advocate. I try and advocate here, question everything. Don't take my word for anything that's said on here, even though you might like me and you've been listening for a while. Don't just take it for granted that I'm actually telling the truth. Go and research what I say. And the same can be applied for you and anybody else that comes on to any of these shows, either as a guest or a presenter. Last thing here, common sense is something that's being put forward as a revolutionary thing now, or statement of the obvious. So just as we wrap this one up here, again, this woman, Victoria Atkins, Member of Parliament for Louth and Horncastle, Health and Social Care Secretary, she makes a statement: everyone who needs a dentist should be able to get one. And I'm sure around the country, there's many people giving Victoria a standing ovation for that. Why? It's common sense. Of course, if you need a dentist, you should be able to get one. But the bottom line is you can't if you need one in certain areas. So her plan will deliver 2.5 million extra dental appointments. There's a £20,000 golden handshake to be paid out for dentists to work in areas where, quote, recruitment is difficult, unquote. In other words, areas that nobody else wants to operate in because there's no money in it. The government are going to try and incentivize dentists to go in there, but 20 grand won't go a long way. Dentists are probably a good dentist would make that in about 2 weeks. So is that really going to incentivize him to go into some hellhole and start pulling teeth?
Well, the tooth holds tooth and nothing but the tooth. You're absolutely right. We need to look at that sort of basis. You need to work out what is the reason that there aren't enough dentists, and 20 grand may or may not cut it for a lot of people. That's an awful lot of money. What you need to look at, I think most people in those sort of professions, it's vocational. The reason they do it, the primary reason I would hope that most people do it, is not for the money, but because they want to make a difference. And without sort of emphasizing that too much, I think that's a real thing. We need to look at why aren't there not enough dentists at the moment? It is absolutely right that we need to make sure that everybody's looked after. And I think the political parties now are all sort of merging into focus on the policies as opposed to necessarily the differences. The left party doesn't need to say everything contrary to the right party. You can turn around and say, look, what is a fundamental point? And health for all has got to be a fundamental point. So I would look a bit further than just the money side. Look at why dentists need to be in certain places and that sort of stuff. But common sense, and my good friend Esther McVeigh is the Minister for Common Sense. I used to do a regular show with her every week, where basically we did Andrew Eborn's greatest writs and look at the various legal cases around the world. And she talks about that sort of stuff, that the one thing that's missing, the thing about common sense, is not as common. And I think we need to reintroduce it.
I think we do. And also, if we can bring this full circle, one of the first things you mentioned was Ozempic, okay, fat loss drug. How about exercise? How about cutting down on the McDonald's? How about prevention is better than cure? And here we are having a conversation about paying dentists 20 grand to go into certain areas and freeing up 2.5 million. How about teeth brushing? How about investing in a good old toothbrush and a tube of Colgate and brushing your teeth twice a day and cutting back on the sugary foods? Again, that's common sense, isn't it? But we're always hearing about the solution to a problem rather than the prevention of said problem, when we really need to shake ourselves.
We're too reliable, Rick, on experts. So we always have to, we sort of derogate sort of responsibility to a third party and say, well, look, it's their fault, they haven't done it. You're right. The responsibility starts with us and our family and the community and so on and so forth. And just on Ozempic, for example, okay, what it does, it suppresses your hunger, might have other benefits as well. But as soon as you stop it, your hunger's going to come back again. And as soon as that happens, if you haven't changed your lifestyle, I presume you're going to put all your weight back on. So you're right. You need to look at the fundamental cause and deal with that.
And anybody that goes down the shortcut fat loss route usually sees good results in the short term, but usually they gain everything back and then some. It would be better actually to just stay as a fatty than become a fatty to a skinny and become super obese. Make your own decisions on that one, but walk a little more, eat a little bit less, and don't be so stressed out with life. Andrew, it's been an absolute blast talking to you this morning.
It's been a real joy, Ray. Look forward to joining you again very, very soon.
Listen, it's been a pleasure. Follow Andrew on X if you use that platform at Andrew Eborn, Eborn, or check out the website, octopus.tv. So whatever you're going to do now, I hope you have a great day. We've got to take a little break now and welcome Basil Valentine on here. But stay tuned for more madness here on Locked and Loaded TNT. We'll be right back.
Informative and engaging. Rick Munn on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.